Hi, I'd like to thank Vision in Life for this interview. My name is Mark Metternich and I'm a professional nature/landscape photographer. And I'm going to go ahead and jump into the interview. I didn't prep, I didn't clean up, I didn't do anything, so this is down and dirty, raw and real. So let me just go ahead and stutter and whatever to give you raw, real answers to the interview questions, and hopefully that's something that's refreshing to you, not pre-scripted out. Mark, number one, you have been an example for landscape photographers all over the world for years. Your portfolio is full of amazing pictures that show your passion for nature. How did you become a landscape photographer? You know, I've done so many interviews, I'm always repeating some of the same things, but to keep it as short as possible so this doesn't go crazy long, my dad was and is a world-class alpine mountain climber. He has climbed, summited over 220 major summits, and he started at age 30. He's a Marine. He's always been very healthy. He is 79, turning 80, and still putting on the backpack and soloing mountains. So I was born and raised in the Pacific Northwest, which is one of the most incredibly diverse and epic landscape areas in the whole world, Oregon specifically. And when you are born and raised around it, and then you're raised by an outdoorsman who, from a baby, I was in his backpack hiking through the Columbia River Gorge or climbing mountains with him or going to the Oregon coast or whatever. And my dad also had a deep appreciation and a spiritual connection to nature, and that just can't help but rub off on you. So really it's my dad and the immense beauty of the environment that I was born into. Now the question is, how did you become a landscape photographer, like professional or whatever? That's a really good question. I was going out and going to these places for my own spiritual retreats anyways. And at some point somebody gave me a digital camera, and this was, we're talking about 16 years ago now. And I happened to get into a car accident at the same time, and then the digital camera came, and my dad gave it to me actually, and we weren't in really close relationship at the time, and he was living in a different state. He sent it to me. He just said, "Hey man, I got this digital camera, it's 3.2 megapixels, I don't know what to do with it. Would you like to have it?" And I was like, yeah. And I'd always been taking pictures since about age, I don't know, maybe 7. I always had a camera, but never took it seriously. And then also my father-in-law at the time gave me a copy of Photoshop, but he did not know that my dad had just given me a digital camera. So I got into a car accident, didn't have to work for about 6 months. I had a paycheck, small paycheck coming in, and I was in a very important time in my life where I was going through a lot of healing, a lot of spiritual healing. And so I took off to where I take off to often for that therapeutic aspect of what we get out of nature. And I'd go to the mountains, I'd go to Mount Hood, I'd go to the coast. And I just started taking pictures because it was so beautiful. And eventually I ran into a professional photographer who referred me to the internet and forums, which were just starting to come up at the time. We're talking before, you know, like around 2001. I just started learning like crazy, posting my work, and people encouraged me, and I never thought I was going to do it professionally. I was just doing it out of an obsession and enjoyment, and not even for ego, not even for these pats on the back and, you know, attention getting like so many people are doing today. I just loved to do it, and I didn't even care if the whole world saw my work. I just wanted to post it maybe somewhere to share it, and people encouraged me, so I kept moving forward. But really, to answer that question, the bottom line is I was born in a very beautiful place. I was born by a very radical outdoorsman, very fit person who's climbed world-class mountains, who climbed probably about once every 4 months of his life, every 3 months of his life. He summited over 220 summits, and he wrote a book about it. Anyway, that's how that all happened. question number 2. You're a very religious man. What does religion mean for your life and your work? Oh man, are you kidding me? That's a dangerous question. There's another word for those types of questions. People are so hypersensitive to spiritual things these days, especially in America. People have such radically wide views of what the word religious means. And the belief system that I have has been so completely misunderstood and wrongly represented that it's challenging to answer this question. So I guess the best way to answer this question would be to be flat out honest, and hopefully people don't judge me. I will tell you before I tell you the answer to this question that I love people of all types, all belief systems. I have best friends that are staunch atheists. I have best friends that are agnostic. They're, not sure what they believe. They think there's maybe some kind of a higher power or something. Somehow this all came to be supernaturally, probably. And then I have people who of various faiths too, even in my own family system. So please don't judge me as I tell you the truth about what I believe. And some of you may just think I'm nuts, but that's okay. So you're a very religious man. What does religion mean for your life and your work? I am utterly convinced, and I am a skeptic. I am an analytical person. I'm a well-balanced person. I'm not delusional. People who know me know my character. They know that I'm a honest person. And I mean, we all have our imperfections, but my really best friends that have been with me for years, they could very easily tell you this. But I absolutely believe in Jesus Christ and the historicity of the documents of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in the New Testament of the Bible. And I also believe in the reliability of the entire New Testament and the Old Testament. What does that mean? It means that I believe that Jesus is who he said he was, the Savior of the world. And I believe that God loves me and loves all humanity and has provided salvation for all humanity as a sheer gift, and people who want it, all they have to do is step over and receive it. And those who don't want it don't have to have it. God is not in the business of shoving himself down our throat. In fact, he always leaves a level of mystery. Even if you see the miraculous, even if you have encounters with God, he still leaves this room of mysteriousness, so that it's up to us as free will beings to decide if we want to search, ask, and find. So what does it mean for my life and my work? It means everything. Photography means absolutely nothing to me, less than nothing to me in comparison to my faith. Now, you're a very religious man. How people may interpret that can go different ways. Like, I'm a real strict law keeper, and I'm real rigid about morals and my performance, and trying to do the right thing so that I can appease God or appease the gods or appease Christ. That, in that sense, no, I'm not very religious. I drink a beer here and there. I've gone through anything anybody else has gone through. I've gone through the struggles. I've gone through the pain. I've gone through the losses. I've done bad things in my life. But God loves me. He loves me no more or no less based on my performance or what I do. He loves me. And that is the message of Christ about who God is. And I absolutely believe that. Why do I believe that? I don't believe that out of sheer faith. Faith is really important, but I accepted that belief as a child. I've put that faith into practice, and I have seen miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle from age 8 to age 50, which I am right now today. And He has proven Himself to me to the point where it would be stupid and absurd for me to even reject the belief now. And I'm writing a book called Miracles, Proofs That Convinced My Heart to Believe. And it's also going to be audio on YouTube that people can just listen to the stories. And I'm going to begin putting that out. I'm going to have a YouTube channel called Faith Matters. I already have it. I haven't put it to the public yet, and I'm going to talk about some of these things. So anyways, that's why I believe what I believe somewhat. And how does that affect my life? Well, I believe God loves me. He has infinitely, completely, entirely forgiven me, past, present, and future, and I must also do the same. It just goes without saying. Jesus said, forgive and you'll be forgiven. Not only should we love our neighbor as ourselves, but He even said, love your enemy. In fact, one of the top religious philosophers of all religion in the world, one of the top in the world, once said that all of the teachings on morality and ethics in the last 2,000, 3,000 years are just footnotes on the Sermon of the Mount that Jesus taught. I absolutely believe that. I study it, and I do not believe anyone has ever surpassed Jesus's teachings, the way He lived His life, and also the historicity of His death and resurrection, which proved that He was who He really was. Now, that gets people all, frustrated sometimes or whatever, because people get political about it, which Jesus was not political. People get rigid about their rules and stuff, which Jesus didn't. He befriended the broken, bedraggled, beat up, burnout, people who didn't have it all together, and He gave amazing grace to people who in no way, shape, or form deserved it by any means. And so I consider myself a ragamuffin Christian. That's just my own terminology. And I'm broken, beat up, bedraggled, burnout. I'm shifting the heavy suitcase from one hand to the other. I don't have it all together, and I'm not too proud to accept the free handout and appreciation of amazing grace in my life. And that's how it affects me. How does it affect my photography? I see the awesomeness of God in the beauty of His creation. That's why I was going out there in the first place without the camera, and even more so with the camera. People say, man, you're such a good photographer. Wow, awesome photos. You're such a good photographer. I always kind of chuckle inside and I say, you know what? The art was there. I just pointed a box at it and pushed a button. And I get all the credit. Now, I'm not going to downplay the fact that there is expertise and there's technique and things like that involved in what I do and what we do as photographers, but the art's already there. And some people equate the art to no one and nothing, and some people equate the art to maybe something else, but I equate the art to God. And He is the artist. He allows things to happen that are beautiful, and I just get the privilege of pushing a button and capturing some of it. And hopefully some people see that beauty in the work that I reproduce, and hopefully it blesses them and speaks to them in a spiritual manner that is benevolent toward them, that God loves them. Now that I've said that, if there's anybody left watching this, I'll answer the next question. You are using the social network as a part of your job and your life. What do you think about social networking and its influence on art? huge pluses and huge minuses. There are so many photographers out there and so many great photographers out there that it is absolutely saturating the market and getting people desensitized to phenomenal moments. When I put a photo out where I have a double rainbow with a lightning strike in it, and I just did another one where the lightning is going through the rainbow over one of the most epic spots on the planet, and people say, yeah, that's a pretty good photo. Yeah, that's pretty good. You can tell people are getting radically desensitized to the awesomeness that we get to go and take pictures of. That alarms me, concerns me. When occasionally somebody on my workshops, I lead workshops for the large part of my living all over the Northwest, the Southwest, Glacier National Park, Africa, different countries. You can just check my website, markmetternich.com, for workshops there. Print workshops, mastering print, fine art printmaking. But anyway, I'm noticing that once in a while I get people, they're just, my dad called them peak baggers when he was a mountain climber. All they wanted to do was get to the top and get down. They didn't even appreciate the climb up, the climb down, the beauty around them, the sunset, the clouds below them. They just had to get to the top and down. I'm noticing that people, especially of a type that are real needy of attention and ego-driven, sometimes it's just a shot. And I try to point out the beauty of things around as you know, we're going to these places, and sometimes people, they don't have eyes for it. And I think that some of that might be because of what social media has, you know, caused, this big competition, who can outdo who, with more lightning strikes and more rainbows and double rainbows and unicorns flying by sprinkling fairy dust and sun stars and, you know, everything all in one photo. I love really dramatic, amazing photos, but that ego-driven competition without profound appreciation for what I consider creation is alarming to me. It's kind of sad that people, some people to a certain extent, can't appreciate subtlety in photos, just subtle beauty. And I've always really loved some minimalism and subtle beauty. So, and then, I don't know, it's just, there's a lot to be said about the whole thing. Having to post your work in 100 different places today to try to get attention constantly, that's the hard part of the job. If I didn't make a living, full-time living, over the last more than 10 years doing this, literally I would still be taking photos of the things that are beautiful to me, but I'd probably just post them in one place just to share, not to get ego or pats on my back or attention. That's one of the things that really sort of sickens me, is the people that, I see them kind of come and go, they just want so much attention, and then they sort of burn themselves out and disappear. And a lot of them, they'll do workshops with the top photographers, stick their tripods in the exact same holes, take the same photos, and even some people will go have somebody else do the post-processing for them. And without having a profound connection and appreciation to nature or originality. But it also allows us to share our work with millions and even billions today. So there's pluses and minuses. And it's also having an effect on the locations we're going to. I'm of the type that I will not disclose the location unless it's already a very popular location everybody goes to. Sometimes people will get mad at me about that, but I don't care. If it's a special location, I want to keep it special. I surely don't want to tell millions of people where it is so that they can trample it and try to get the exact same shot. And that happens from time to time with these popular photographers. If they share a spot, some of these places get totally destroyed in a couple of years. So anyway, lots of pluses and minuses there. I won't bore you with a lot more that I could come up with and think about. I'll go on to the next question. You have spent a huge part of your life in the wilderness. What's happening to you when you leave these crowded places and you choose the loneliness? I've had someone tell me that I'm kind of like the Bear Grylls of landscape photography, which is a funny comment because I really think that Mark Metternich owns that title, if anybody. But I have pushed it up toward over 300 days a year on the road traveling, and I've done a lot of really hard work to find original locations where I've shot, and I know that no one's ever taken that photo before. A few locations in the Southwest and even in the Northwest where semi-original, and even a few places that took so much work to get to. I just know for a fact no one has that photo in the world except for me. That's been awesome. That's been awesome. When I was going through a rocky relationship, I was married for 20 years and I got divorced. During some of those rockier times, one of the things for me that helped bring some stability and peace into my heart and life was getting out and getting away and having my time, my spiritual time with God, and also seeing just the beauty of His creation. And so I remember when I lived in Vegas, I had to live there 5 years, and I hated it. I never live there ever again, but I do go there tomorrow to teach a mastering fine art printmaking workshop with Robert Park at Nevada Art Printers, best printer in the world in my opinion, and I love to get the heck out of there. I just loved it. Living in that city was so opposite of my personality. But I pushed it year by year, and after I got divorced, I had 3 good years there where, well, 2, I wouldn't say they were good because I had a lot of grief. I drank for a couple of years, trying to deal with my grief. But nature, for me, getting out was really healing for me. Finally, I just said, you know what, I'm going to go for it. I don't have kids, I don't have a wife, I'm not interested in dating. Why am I sitting here in this town, which was a really great town, Bend, Oregon, at the time. I live in Florida now. And I just said, you know, I'm going to live out of my car, and I'll run my business off my hotspot on my phone. So I did that for 2 years, and I photographed every day. I drove anywhere I wanted. I drove, you know, all the way to the top of Washington, all the way the whole entire, everywhere in Oregon you can imagine, down through California, Nevada, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, all over the place. And then I was leading workshops in between my shooting. I got to the point where I pushed it so far into isolation. I was always esteeming Mark Metternich. I have to bring him up because he was always pushing 300 days a year in the field. I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. You know, I don't even know if I've done 100. So I'd make a goal, I'm going to try to shoot 100 days this year. Then the next year, I'm going to try 125. Then the next year, 150. We're talking over about, 14 years of time. And I got it all the way up over 300. But what I found was something that I think most people never get the chance to learn. A very, very special thing. I thought I was a little bit of an introvert, maybe a little bit of an extrovert, kind of in between. Well, by being alone that much, I reached a complete wall where I couldn't take being alone even another hour. And I drove all the way from Utah all the way back to Oregon over a couple of days and got back with my family, my friends, my community. And I learned that isolation, it feels euphoric when you're working and you're in your office and you don't like your job and you're around people too much. It feels euphoric. When you go camping, when you go doing what we do. But taken to extremes, I have learned that I would much rather be in a room crowded full of people that are irritating me than to be alone by myself too much. And all of that shifted. I used to be able to spend months by myself, and now I have a hard time being totally by myself, even a short period of time. I think I damaged myself in that area, But the thing is I learned the value of friendships, relationships, family, community, church, just, you know, people, and loving people and being loved by people and being in relationship with them. I believe that human beings are something like, I have dogs, and they just want to be together. I believe that human beings are made to be in relationship with other human beings. And some people who don't like people are going to absolutely dispute that. I understand if you've been abused or you haven't been loved right or whatever, you know, that's probably not going to be all that natural. But I do believe that when we're whole and we're well as human beings, we're designed to be in relationship with each other. So today, I'm still doing the radical crazy adventures, but I'm doing them in smaller doses. I will take off, I will come back home. I'll take off, I'll come back home. Right now I'm engaged, I'm planning on getting married, and I am in a family system that's close-knit that I've never experienced in my life. And I have 3 boys to help take care of, and it is a new experience for me at this age, and I am loving it. But I love the balance of the adventure and going back and forth. Photoshop is a part of your photographic art. You can find tons of discussions about the pros and cons of using Photoshop. What's your opinion on the topic? I don't believe there is any cons about using Photoshop. We shoot digital today. That is a digital negative. A digital negative is a black and white image that is so grayed out you can't even see it. It's uninterpreted data. Anything beyond that is a massive manipulation of the original, and it can go into all different directions. There is no purest way that any automatic algorithm can do for you. None. Every camera's got its own interpretation, and those cameras are basically designed to sell cameras, so they don't want to overdo anything, they don't want to underdo anything, they want to, they're very arbitrary in some ways, and in some ways it's geared towards marketing. So, but the original file is a digital negative. So we have to think almost like in terms of film. Can you put that little negative on the wall? No, it has to be massively altered, massively adjusted, massively interpreted, and turn into something different to where our eyes can see something that is similar to what we actually saw. And a lot of people don't know how far, they don't think it through, how far photography is from how we actually see things. As an example, we see in panorama. I can see my fingers right now, but I can't see my finger right now. So we're talking a panorama that's like this, but our brain interprets it almost like it's spherical, but we don't see spherical, we see in panorama. So if someone takes a photo and they haven't done anything to the photo and just comes up in Lightroom and then they post it, that isn't anything like reality. That's not how we see. We also see the close-up flowers and the mountain way back there that looks massive. When we take a picture of it, if we use wide angle, get those flowers big, that mountain looks bazillions of miles away. When we take a picture of a bird, it will either stop or it'll be blurred. But guess what? Birds are in motion. And so neither of those are true representations of what we saw. Polarizers, etc. So, the reason why I'm talking about this is Photoshop, even though we have very powerful raw converters, and this is my expertise in the photography business, is post-processing, Lightroom, Camera Raw, Photoshop, mastering, fine art printmaking, and everything that relates to post-processing. Some people call me a digital imaging specialist, and I would accept that title. I've worked for 14 years full-time at studying everything post-processing, and I love to teach it. But the way I view it is these are tools to get the negative to be something that we can see. They are absolutely necessary. Now, with the power of the raw converter today, like Lightroom or Camera Raw, or if you use a different kind of a raw converter, even with all of the power that we now have in these raw converters, which have gotten more power year after year. 2003 is when Adobe Camera Raw came out. It didn't have all those sliders that it has now and all those really fancy algorithms. But even still, with all of that, there's no way that you can take your image to full optimization. Generally speaking, you're throwing away about 30 to 50% of the potential optimization and quality of that image, even if you're a purist, if you're not using Photoshop. It is king of the hill, and if used with some tastefulness and some wisdom and some care, it is absolutely critical for workflow. And I just started a new video tutorial series called Photoshop Basics, No More Intimidation. Volume 1 is finished today. It's going to be released in 2 days, and there's going to be probably 10 volumes. And I'm taking people through the basics of Photoshop and with advanced techniques as well. But I'm showing people that I have documented about 65 to 100 things you can't do in the raw converter that are absolutely important to learn if you want to master post-processing for the optimization of your images, or if you're going to reproduce an image and make it into a print. Photoshop is absolutely critical. Now, photoshopping images in terms of just making completely fake digital creations that didn't even look anything like the scene, and then trying to pawn that off as reality and not having full disclosure, not telling people that these are digital, creations. A lot of people are doing that today, and I don't like that idea. I don't mind the creative process. In fact, some of my very favorite photographers are very creative in their post-processing, but they're also open about what they do. They teach what they do, and so I'm fine with it. So yes, Photoshop can be abused. It can be used as a creative tool, but it also, mainly for me, is an optimization tool. It's a way to develop that negative with more integrity, with more excellence, with more optimization, so that what I experienced out there and what I saw out there and what my body could see is better relayed to the viewer. So hopefully that answers that question. And again, if people are going to be totally creative and cut and paste stuff in, and I see it all the time because I have thousands of followers like on Facebook and Instagram, and I see their work. Sometimes it's appalling what people are doing to photos. And I mean, bless their heart, they're trying their best, but sometimes it's just crazy, and especially when they're trying to say, hey, this is real. That part bugs me. So anyway, I love Photoshop. I love the raw converter. I am an Adobe advocate. I believe that Adobe has the best raw converters in Lightroom Classic, and also in Adobe Camera Raw. And Photoshop is the best of the best of the best, and I love it, and I love teaching it. And without it, we would not be able to have the quality of imagery that we have today. So it's all good, in my opinion. You are popular for your pictures of American landscapes. Why does this region work best for you? Could you also imagine being a world traveler? I am a world traveler. I go all over the world. I've traveled all over the world. Africa, I've gone to Australia, I've gone to Patagonia, I've gone Egypt and Israel, and I've been all over the place. Canada. I even went to Patagonia and led a workshop there, and I've only posted one photo in my entire portfolio from Patagonia. It's because I don't want to lead any workshops to Patagonia. Everybody in the whole world sort of descended on it, and me, that sort of ruins it when everybody in the whole world is trying to get all the same photos from the same places. I like to do things that are a little more original. I'm leading a workshop coming up probably at the end of the year or next year to Uganda, Africa. Who leads workshops to Uganda? What's in Uganda? Most people wouldn't even know what I'm even talking about. I've been going there for over 20 years, and I've been there 5 or 6 times, and I've scouted the whole country out. It's phenomenal. I love originality, so I am a world traveler. So that assumption is not correct. Now, why have I concentrated on the west of the United States? And I'm living now in Florida, which is the east, because Oregon itself is so diverse, you could never exploit it all, find it all, photograph it all in a lifetime. And that's just one state. The west of the United States is absolutely, in my opinion, the most incredibly diverse, photogenic, epic landscapes in the world. Now there's some few little exceptions here and there, but even Oregon, as just one state, has everything in it. I mean, we have rainforests, we have, incredible coastline. Many people that have been to almost every coastline to photograph seascapes have hired me to do Pacific Northwest or Oregon coast workshops, and they have many times told me this is the most incredible and diverse seascape coastline that I've ever seen in my life. So we have thousands of world-class waterfalls, we have snow, capped mountains, we have rivers, we have high desert, we have incredible, it's just awesome. So the bottom line really is I find everything that I want to photograph in the West. I believe that some of the photographers that are really popular, that are from the same regions as me, but that have gone off to Iceland and Greenland and Patagonia and all these other places, I think that yes, the exotic appealed to them to some extent, but I also believe that some of that was marketing, that many of them would also agree that they could just stay home and photograph their local area and be happy the rest of their life. But to lead people to places that are exotic and somewhere very far on the globe, somewhere in Russia or somewhere on the bottom of the planet or whatever, just sort of appeals to adventurers. And I have done that to some extent, but I've been so happy with, especially my Southwest work. I've developed an incredible reputation for the Southwest, and it's because I lived there. I lived in the desert, I lived in my car, in my rig, my four-wheel drive out there for years, and I've been able to produce an incredible amount of work from the Southwest that makes people want to do workshops with me out there. And when you have that high of a demand, I did 10 workshops last year that were all booked up in the Southwest. I need to still go out there because I make my living doing this. But same time, yes, I don't mind taking off to some other places in the world and checking some other things out, but I don't have a big, huge desire for that. We are spoiled rotten in America for beautiful scenery, especially in the west of the United States. Number 7, workshops are an important part of your work. What do you enjoy more? Being in the wilderness with other photographers, hanging around with them and talking about photography and such? Or do you just like to be by yourself with no one around, just the nature and you? I think I've already answered that to some extent. When I first started doing photography, I never wanted to photograph with anybody. It was just me getting away from everything, and it was me, being ministered to by this outrageous awe of the beauty of what I see as God's creation. When I see a Milky Way, when I consider the vastness of the universe, or the infinite complexity of a human cell, or whatever, I'm blown away by the majesty and the awe and wonder of what I consider as creation. So for me, it was getting out, it was a spiritual time for me, and I love to do it by myself. I did not want to do it with other people. Fast forward 16 years, I rarely want to be by myself out there. I want to enjoy it with somebody else. I want to experience it with somebody else. I want to be standing next to someone in a place like this, if you can see this, on the edge of the Grand Canyon, 1 mile straight down, double rainbow lightning striking. I want to share it with people. So especially in the last year, I don't know what's happened to me, but I so look forward to the people in my workshops, getting to know them, hanging out with them, sharing the experience with them, laughing, having fun, and trying my very best to study the weather and be flexible to put them where the very best moments of light are going to be. And when that happens and everybody's blown away, I just love it. And I also love it if I just go out and photograph with a friend. It is such an incredible thing to share with other people. So it may come as a surprise, and if you had asked me this 4 years ago, my answer would have been reversed. I would say I want to be by myself. I like being out there by myself the most, but absolutely today, without fail, I do not want to be out there by myself. I can handle a small amount of time by myself knowing that people are coming, or my fiance, who will be my wife, if she flies in and we spend time together, or she's going to assist me in a workshop or something like that. I absolutely am an extrovert and I love people, so I love sharing it with people. 4 more questions. Where do you find inspiration? Which artists have been the greatest source of inspiration to you? Oh man, I hate making the lists because I'll always forget somebody, and it'll be somebody that just so inspires my work. But I will say this, I used to, in the early years, over 10 years ago, when I first got into it, Mark Metternich was really just starting to take off. And when I started to get into forums and I saw his work, I was like, what in the world? He was definitely a pioneer, and he was like 1 step or 2 or 3 steps ahead of everybody else that I could find anywhere in terms of his dynamic and dramatic and radical and just over-the-top landscape, and his efforts to find these things. And that was very, very, very inspirational to me. Not that I was in love with all of his work, but a great deal of his work just blew my mind and encouraged me to work harder and push harder and do things that I wouldn't usually do. Hike in the dark, hike by myself, out in nature where there's bears, and stay in a tent when it's freezing out, and all of these things. So he was massive in my development, and I've told him that. And I just told him one time when I was in Patagonia, I ran into him and we were leading workshops side by side, and I told him that, and I told him I don't think I would have been half the photographer if I wouldn't have seen his work or been inspired by his work. He said, you would have. He said, you would have found a way. And that was a really great compliment. He was basically saying it was in you. I was just a person who inspired you, but you would have found a way because that's who you are and it's built into you. And that was probably a right answer. But as time went by, and all these other great photographers have come out, and I started really loving another one, and then another one, then another one, and I'd love to mention all their names and give them publicity, but what's happened is I'm not so inspired now by any particular person. I am inspired by them, and I incredibly appreciate their work, and sometimes their new pieces make me drool and just blow my mind totally. But there's so many good photographers out there that may not be producing huge bodies of work, and they may not be professionals. Most people are not professionals. Very few. Even some that purport to be professional are not really full professionals. They have other jobs, or they're living off their wife's income or whatever. Very few people are making a living at this. it's more of an image-to-image basis today. You know, if I see an image that just blows my mind, it inspires me and it makes me want to go out and maybe get similar types of imagery. If I see an incredible seascape, then it makes me want to go to the ocean and shoot seascapes or whatever. So that's how it is today. But I don't mind mentioning names. Mark Adamus was the first massive and the biggest and the longest inspiration in my life. When Ryan Dyer began to shoot Glacier National Park like crazy and then forward, I've always loved his very creative work and his creative approach to post-processing. Some people, you know, have an issue with it, but I don't at all. I can name so many. Alex Noriega, I was preaching his work before anybody even really you know, knew a whole lot about who he was. In fact, I remember even telling a couple top photographers, yeah, now Alex's work, and they'd seen Alex's work. I said, man, Alex's work is phenomenal, and they're like, really, you think so? I was like, yeah. I mean, what I loved about his work is he was able to keep things pretty simple, but still have a powerful effect, rather than having to have, you know, sun stars and light beams and rainbows and water splashing at you and everything all in one photo. He could shoot something very subtle, but still have a very, even minimalistic, and it have a powerful effect. So I was really, you know, appreciative of his work for a long time. Gosh, I don't know. There's so many more people that I can mention, but I don't want to start mentioning people and then make people feel bad that I didn't mention them. So many more people, and some people, they don't even know that I've been so inspired by their work. 3 more questions. For many people, being a landscape photographer seems to be the perfect job. What do you think about it? About it being the perfect job? Have there also been hard times for you? There is marketing, and then there's reality. And when I was living out of my car, doing nothing but photographing 24/7, my followers and market grew exponentially because they saw, wow, this guy's getting crazy, he's living out of his car, and you know, that's what I want to do. And he's, one day he's at the Grand Canyon, the next day he's at Death Valley, the next day he's at the California coast or something. And it's crazy the amount of followers that I was getting during that time. I still am accumulating followers based, I believe, on the quality of my work and educational materials, but that just appeals to so many people that have that adventure spirit in them, and they're stuck in their job or whatever. I'm going to reread this question so I make sure I'm answering it correctly. So, perfect job. It isn't what people think it is. And I'm coming to the conclusion that nothing is. That multi-million-dollar super athlete, that super musician who loves playing their guitar or whatever else, travels all over the world, that movie star who hits it to the top. In fact, Jim Carrey, who was the biggest grossing, most popular comedic actor in all of Hollywood for a very long time, has expressed more recently how it is all a big lie, that it does not satisfy in any way, that it leads to complete emptiness. And I would encourage people to look up what he said, and he's seeking more the deeper meaning of life now, and I don't know that he's actually found it. I believe that that is found in Jesus, who is the way, the truth, and the life, and our salvation and our future with God. But landscape photography, you know, bouncing around the planet, taking pretty pictures. You know what the truth is, and I know this for a fact, I know most of my contemporaries, most of my professional people that I am in competition with, or, you know, or I'm grouped together with, that do this for a living. I've met a lot of them. There's quite a few that I still haven't met or whatever, but most of the big ones, the ones that I really wanted to meet, I've met. And it's interesting how when you see what they're really doing to grow their name, what they really have to do. I've had a lot of, even some of these names come to me and say, how have you done it? You know, it's so hard. And I just told them, you know, I just overworked. I just worked 7 days a week, 14, 16 hours a day, till I'm burnt out. And then I take a day off, and then I'm probably usually sick or something on the couch. And then I go back to working again. It comes at great, great sacrifices. Terribly great sacrifices. It's awesome at times, it's fun, it's a blast. There's all these benefits to it as well. But there is such a level of sacrifice involved in it. People don't understand that. The comment that I get, like on Facebook and Instagram and things like that, where people say, man, you're so lucky, you know, or you know, you're so lucky to be able to do this or whatever. People do not know the cost. And when you start paying the price, really paying the price, the incredible amounts of sacrifice, loneliness, exhaustion, travel, and all the things that go along with it, you start looking at the people that have gone further than you or are ahead of you, and then you start respecting them like, whoa, that person has paid a mighty price, and no one knows it. And one of the keys to marketing is don't tell anybody about that side of it. Just make it look like it's a blast, it's fun, we're always camping, we're always, you know, it's always pure fun. The fact is, another thing I wanted to say is some of the best, most successful landscape photographers are some that don't have a really huge library, don't travel a lot, they just hash out hours and hours and hours and hours behind a computer, making connections, connecting with companies, connecting, marketing. They have people sometimes working for them, helping them do administrative work, and they're working this 18 hours a day, 16 hours a day. They're getting out shooting once in a while. And I know some of these people. I know some of the best photographers in the whole world, some of the most popular and most successful. And I remember one telling me a decade ago, do you know how many days a year I really shoot? And I'd be like, what? He says, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks. The whole rest of the year, I'm working hard, grunt work marketing. And he is, in Australia, maybe the #1 photographer. So that's kind of the reality of it. Now, I don't want to make it all negative. I have been able to go to places and see things that most people in the whole world will never have the opportunity to, and so I feel absolute gratitude about being able to do this. But I just want to be clear that there's that gratitude, there is the fun, there's the beauty, there's the getting out, but I'm telling you, if you're going to try to be successful at marketing, you're going to have to grind out this part more, and learning to be a business person more than just this adventurer bounces around the planet. To get that image of the adventurer that bounces around the planet out to the masses, it takes a massive amount of labor and even teamwork, or no one will know about you. They won't know about you. 2 more questions. I caught it on Facebook that you are involved in helping orphan children in Africa, and that you might also lead workshops there. What is this about? How did this come about, and what does this mean for your life? I really, really appreciate this interview, because a lot of interviews, not all, but a lot of interviews are just, you know, what camera do you use, what tripod do you use. They're not really about who are you as a person. They don't dig in. I have been going to Uganda, Africa, for over 20 years. I've been there either 5 or 6 times, and I have been involved steadily in raising awareness and sponsorship and helping orphaned kids in Uganda to be able to get an education. That's the best possible thing that we can do for them so that they have a higher percentage of chance of survival or even thriving. This has been dear to my heart since I ever went. I went this year with my fiance, and she absolutely loved it. Everyone I've ever brought, and I've brought groups over there, have been absolutely amazed at the graciousness and the lovingness of the Ugandan people. Every country in Africa is totally different. I've been to several, and I am fond of Africa. How that happened was in my 20s, I met an African who was living in sub-Saharan Africa, and he was, again, in his early 20s, and he was taking care of kids and babies that were dying of AIDS. He had gone through a region that was devastated by AIDS. 80% of the inhabitants had AIDS. And he was going through there on some sort of a mission. The kids came up to him and said, "We have no mommies or daddies or aunts or uncles or anybody, brothers or sisters, to take care of us. Will you be my daddy?" And he ended up leaving, and when he went back to the city, he was a nice looking man, educated, he even has a PhD today, and it broke his heart, and he was not able to go back to the city. He turned around and went back out there and began to help, and he had no help. For 3 years, all he had was the clothes on his back, not even a change of clothes, a toothbrush, and his Bible. He is a great man of faith, and a man who lives his faith. He lives it out with integrity, year in and year out. He's been doing this work for 27 years, and he has never given up. And those 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 kids that he began to fend for, he had no support, he had no money. He had to go days without eating. He's never slept more than about 2 to 4 hours per night. Except for a few times in his life. He will go without eating for weeks sometimes at a time to provide for others. When people do give him a little bit of support money, he gives it away to others. And he's been doing this for 27 years, like I said, and it started out, he didn't even have a place to bring the kids. They stayed under a tree. A Muslim man allowed them to use the back of this shack, and that grew into 20 or 30. Over 3 years, he had every imaginable scientific organization and religious organization and humanitarian organization come to him, because this is a rural area in Uganda, and he was basically the only English-speaking person there. So they would, go to him to find out about the things. And he said that in that 3 years, almost everyone promised him things like support or helping the kids or whatever, and he says not one organization followed through. I was part of a ministry called Good Samaritan Ministries in Beaverton, Oregon, not to be confused with any other ministry by a similar or the same name. And this is a counseling organization. It is Christian based, but it is a counseling and a humanitarian organization. And I was part of it, and I went to a meeting, and that's how I ended up meeting him. I didn't know that I would ever meet him. And when I found out about his life, and I was about 24 years old, he was like 27, and I heard about what he was doing, how he was living his life, I was like, man, he is the most opposite person of me that I've ever met. I mean, all I ever think about is myself, and this guy, all he ever thinks about is other people. And I had the privilege of having him in my home. He is the most loving, gentle, most humble, most giving, most generous, most Jesus-like human being I've ever met in my entire life. And I can say that he is my best friend even to today. I have many best friends, but he's one of my best friends. I talked to him 2 days ago, and he's still doing the work. And now we have about 2,200 kids in Africa that he's helping. And he has been steady on. And we have one school in Chiwangala, which is outside of Masaka, Uganda. And we have about 1,000 kids going to school there through sponsorship. And we have almost half of them are orphans in an orphanage. And no moms, no dads, no place to go. And tough situations. But I love to go there and just hang out with the kids. That's what I do. Just hang out with the kids. How people are like, man, you're like a saint. Oh my gosh, that's so amazing that you do that. How hard is it to just go hang out with kids and allow your heart to be touched? That's what I do. But I come back and I share the stories with people. Most people don't respond. Most people don't care. Some people judge me and say, you need to be helping people in America. I usually say, well, the people who say that to me usually are the people who are doing the least in America. And then they walk off because it's usually true. But I'm not all about just African kids. I'm about my neighbors right down the road here. I'm about the elderly. I'm about my family system. I'm about other people's family systems. I'm about my friends. It's just one facet of living a life in the light of God's love and allowing it to shape our character to where we are able to love others and not put up our walls of protection and learn to sacrifice and give, and we get blessed for it. So that's what it is, and I'm going to be leading a workshop in Uganda. It's going to be a sort of a photojournalism. It's going to be nature. It's going to be wildlife. That country is incredibly diverse in its beauty for landscape and wildlife, and like the apes up in the mountains near Rwanda, and the lake regions and the volcanoes and all of that. I've traveled the whole country, and it's a very safe country, relatively speaking. Very good security, but it's also going to be some photojournalism, maybe some city stuff, and then on the last day I intend to take people to this school to be able to just hang out with these orphan kids and see the work of the school for maybe a half a day or a day. And then they'll be able to go home, and hopefully I'll be able to stay for an extra few days or a week and just hang out with the kids. So that's what it is. It's an incredible privilege. It costs a lot of money to go to Africa. But, if people are serious about it, they just make the decision and they find ways to do it. So I hope that I can go every year, every other year from here on out. That's the goal. I'm not sure if I'll be able to attain it or not yet, but I absolutely love that work. That work, hanging out with kids, those kids call you dad. You can be even young. You can be 21, go there, and these kids will call you dad. And when you go home, it kind of ruins your life in one respect. You can't think only about yourself anymore. But it's awesome because if you're willing to stay connected to the kids, maybe help a little bit, permanent relationships are established that go the rest of your life. I have an adopted son over there. He lives over there. I call him my adopted son because I've taken him on as my son, but he lives over there. I live over here. He's taken care of by a family. He's growing up, and now he's taking care of that family, and now he's doing that work. And a lot of these children that we're giving to, it's amazing how they come back and they end up continuing the work. And he takes care of blind kids, orphan kids, abused kids, street kids, and he has no resources except for very little that people give to him, and he gives all of that away. So it's tremendous, and he calls me dad. He, WhatsApp or phone calls me almost every single day. And what an awesome thing to be involved in. I would encourage people, learn to get outside of yourself. To be intro focused is death. To focus outward and allow yourself to be moved. And it will include suffering. You can't put your walls up. You have to allow yourself to love, and someone dies, it hurts really bad, But the best life in this world is a life of outside, forgetting about ourselves. My best days are the days where I totally forget about myself. I am so engrossed in other people and other people's lives and other things to where I'm not thinking about my problems. So when I'm not thinking about my problems, it's awesome. Oh, also, if you're interested in this work, just look me up on Facebook, either my professional page or my personal page. My personal page is usually maxed out at 5,000 followers, so it's better to go to Mark Metternich Photography and just hit follow. And then there's a pull down menu and check see first. If you don't do that, the algorithm in Facebook will basically kick you out to where when I post, you won't see it. People that I want to see their posts, I always do see first, follow see first, and then I always see their posts. So you need to do that, and we will post things there about what the work is, if people want to be involved, if they want to come on one of our photo trips to Africa, they can sign up for one of those workshops. If they just, whatever they want, it's just going to all be right there. It's a good way to connect with me and what we're doing. Okay, final question. This project is called Vision and Life. What do the terms vision and life mean for you, Mark? He says, don't hesitate in being honest here. I believe that most people who would be sitting behind this interview would be highly tempted and would probably give into trying to create some kind of a distorted truth about life and vision for themselves because they don't want to be so transparent that they're vulnerable. I'm going to go ahead and be vulnerable, and some people will hate this and some people will love it and some people will just be neutral about it, I'm sure. But this is an opportunity for me to communicate with maybe some masses of people. So I'm just going to go ahead and let the chips fly where they may. Life and vision. What do those two words mean to me? Jesus said, I have come that they might have life and have it to the full, more than abundantly. Interesting saying. I have come that they might have life and have it more than to the full and more than over abundantly. That's what he said. That either is a lie or that was never even said, or we do have reliable eyewitness testimony and he really did say that, and maybe he really was who he said he was. And I believe the latter. He was who he said he was, and that is why he came. What kind of life is that? That is a life where you are free completely internally, that you are absolutely not an accident in this universe. You were made for a purpose, and that purpose is to be loved by God in ways that you can actually really understand and experience, and that are unconditional, and that you are forgiven for any of the wrongs you've ever done and any of the guilt or shame or condemnation that you have ever carried, which almost every human being I've ever met on this earth has those issues and is trying to shove them off their shoulders. The message of Christ is, I already did it for you. It's a gift. And if you believe in me, that becomes reality. And if you don't want to believe in me, that's your freedom and that's your prerogative, but it brings healing to know that God loves you and has paid the ultimate price for you to show you that he loves you so much. And I've come that they might have life, Um, a life that is healed by God, that is directed by God, and is inspired by God. The word vision, I've said this before many times, and I used to have it on my website, it may still be there. Almost, I would say most people that I meet know very well about personal vision. Well, I want to do this and I want to do that. And I've been that way at certain times in my life, especially when I was younger. It's like, I want to be a professional guitarist. I want to do this, I want to do that. And that's fine. And I think that's great. And it's great achieving your dreams and your goals. But I am finding in life that a lot of these things, once you reach them, end up not being what you thought that they were. And they sometimes become ultimate rip-offs. And it's one thing to have vision for your life. It's another thing to have God's vision for your life. That is with the presupposition that that can actually be obtained. Jesus said to pray that not our will be done, but he prayed this. Not my will be done, but your will be done, God. Now that I've reached middle age in my life and I've accomplished some of the things that I really wanted to accomplish, and they in some ways weren't what I thought they were going to be, and out of my own stubbornness and determination and passion, I have the ability and have had the ability to accomplish many things that I've wanted to accomplish in life. But I've also, in that, have seen some destructiveness in some of those things that I wanted. And after suffering some of that, I have now come to the total conclusion and the total peace and the total confidence and the total desire that I don't want my will anymore. I want His will for me. I absolutely believe that He has a greater life for me than I could ever dream or imagine. So when I submit my will and ask Him for His will, and I really mean it, which takes a level of trust for sure, and some people would say this is all foolishness, but I don't care what they say. Then I believe you're open to really finding life. I have come that they might have life and have it more than over abundantly and beyond. I believe that happens when a person gives up their own will and they seek God's will. They ask, they seek, they knock, and they don't give up asking, seeking, and knocking every single day of their life. Denzel Washington, in a major speech to a major college he gave, talked about his secret to success is putting his sandals way underneath his bed. And what he was talking about was prayer. Get on your face and seek God for His vision, His dream, His life, His passion for your life that you may not know anything about. It may be way out of left field or right field. And then when you wake up in the morning and you got to get your sandals, get back down on your face to get underneath your bed, to get those sandals, and while you're down there, seek God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength for His life, His vision, His passion, His desire, His will for your life. Most people, a lot of people, think that that is a worse life, or a rigid life, or a stifled life, or a God wants to keep these things away from you. He wants to keep the things away from you that are going to damage you, is what He wants. He wants you to have life more than abundantly and above anything you could ever ask or imagine for. And I almost died about a year ago and began to do this. And my life has changed dramatically. I did not have kids. I was all alone. I'd gone through a divorce. I had grieved really hard. I drank a couple of years just to cope with the grief. I had accomplished much of what I wanted to accomplish with my photography business, it didn't satisfy. It was fun, there were satisfying moments, but ultimately it did not satisfy. I ended up giving my life back to God, totally. I was able to break, wasn't me. All addictions were broken in my life. A peace flooded in. And then, as I began to pray those words, your will be done, not mine. I don't want my will anymore. I want your will. I really believe you have a better will for me than I have for myself. I really believe that, and I want that. I don't know what it is, but I want that. Things have changed, and they began to change dramatically and incredibly. And I am now a family man. I am part of a family, close-knit, that loves me. I have 3 boys that I am helping with, and I may be married soon and will be my stepsons. I am never lonely. I didn't know that these desires were in my heart to be a family man and to be a father and to be a community person and to explore new areas in my life, completely different. I'm still doing photography. I still love it. And if he says no on that tomorrow, it's going to be a no. But if he says yes, it's going to be a yes. But I can just tell you that I've never ever been so centered in my life, and I have peace. And I have vision, I have purpose, and I have life in my life. Some of you will be able to hear it in my voice and see it in the passion that rises up inside me. Some of you may struggle with some of the words that I have said, and some of you may darn well hate and even want to kill me for some of the words that I've said. I know that when you talk about spiritual issues, it brings up a whole horde of things inside of so many people. But if you're going to ask the question, and I'm going to be authentic, I'm going to tell you the truth. And Jesus said he was the way, and he was the truth, and he was the life. And that anyone who sought that out from the bottom of their heart, honestly, and were willing to give up their own, they would get a life that they could have never, ever, ever conjured up or imagined. And a satisfaction level. It is incredibly satisfying to be able to help these kids in Africa. And you don't have to be a Christian to do philanthropic humanitarian work. I'm not suggesting that. But this is where my faith has led me, and it's going to lead me all the way home with a smile. That's it. All the best to you, and great light to all of you.